Okay, so now let's apply context to this. Imagine that somebody's vision, imagine your vision was, and let's just create a comparison to climbing a mountain. Okay, so let's say you had a vision to climb a mountain. Would it be worthwhile knowing where you are along that journey in climbing the mountain? Would that be useful to know where you are? Okay, would you want to once in a while stop, look back, reflect on where you came along this journey and try to capture some learnings from that? Would that be worthwhile? Would you want to be able to talk to some people who've actually climbed that mountain before, done the rest of the journey that you haven't completed yet, and hear about what they learned and what they experienced through that? Okay. So would the same apply to business? Would you want to know where you are in the journey, where you've come from, why things have happened the way they have, why people are feeling the way they are, and understand what might be coming up? Would that be valuable context for business? Okay. I really hope the answer to that is yes, because if you say no, then we're going to wipe the boards and we're going to just run a totally open agenda. Okay, so yes? Okay, thank you. Just let's get into the mind frame now of, the best way to do this is get in the mind frame of an entrepreneur. Okay? And just think about us sitting down with 700 entrepreneurs who'd been in business for decades. Okay? Now, successful businesses, because they're actually in business for decades. Okay? And they're all the way over here in the journey. And we asked them to come all the way back here to day one. Okay, day one is right here. And let me define what we mean by day one. So day one is the moment in time that the entrepreneur says to the world, declares to the world, I'm going for it. Or it could be a few people in partnership saying, we're going for it. We're actually going to do this thing, and not just in our heads. We're actually telling the world, we're going to do this thing. Okay? And we asked those 700 people to go to that moment in time when they made that declaration. And we asked them, at that moment, how did you feel? And they said, what? Excited. Okay? Now, for how long was it just excited?
About 30 seconds.
About 2 months ago, I had somebody who runs a very well-known business here, very successful business, and he actually skipped over the excited word and went straight to that second word. And the word that he used was horror. Okay? So there's this excitement. It's raw. It's crazy. It's like, this is going to be the best ride ever. And then there's this horror, this fear, this whatever you want to call it, that's, oh my gosh, did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? And some entrepreneurs bounce between this high and this low multiple times in the same day. Okay? So there are many reasons why the business stats aren't very good in terms of the number that start and the number that reach any kind of mature definition of growth. Okay? And they're all valid reasons. The wrong product, wrong timing, not enough financing, wrong people, all sorts of things. And one of them is, that doesn't get talked about that much, is that in these early days, there is a frantic energy. Now, by the way, this journey is not just for entrepreneurs starting businesses. Okay? People that start a new career will go through their version of this journey. Okay? So day one for the average person starting a new job, okay, there is this combination of excitement and oh my gosh, okay? And sometimes just learning a new email system throws people into frantic, okay? That might be a different generation, okay? Now, this is time going this way, but it's not to scale, meaning that every business, every person runs through their own time frame. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months to go through different points in this journey, and some could be faster, some can be slower. But there is a point in time when the energy shifts, right at that dot. And what happens usually that leads to this shift in the energy is that there's enough evidence in the business that people start thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, this is actually starting to work. So whatever they were looking for as a definition for success, and it could be different for different businesses, but usually it's some clients, some revenue, some positive feedback, some clients actually coming back for more. So this isn't raging success yet. This is the evidence is starting to come in. And when entrepreneurs see that their idea is starting to work, they feel more what? Confident. That is the confident dot. And when entrepreneurs feel more confident, what do they do more of? They put more money into it. They put more, all sorts of things into it. And we call this thing the investment wall. There's investment all the way through this journey. Okay, so we're not saying this is the only time. What we're saying is there's a spike. Okay, so people are feeling more confident, and off the back of that, they're ready to put in even more. So what does it look like? What do you think are the examples that people give us about where the money goes when they're investing more in their business at this point? What are the examples?
They might rent an office.
Yep.
Whereas previously they were working at home.
Absolutely. Out of the basement or out of Class C into sort of nice office. Yep.
Hiring their first person or second person.
Yeah. And so hiring first person, or my favorite story is somebody said, oh my gosh, I remember this point. This is when we started hiring real people. So I said, well, who were you hiring before you were hiring real people? And it was friends and family. Okay, one person said that at this point, this is when they were ready to quit their day job. So they were hanging on to the day job as a safety blanket, safety net. Okay? So it's all sorts of things, more people, more plant, more equipment. It's just whatever they feel is necessary for the business. But there's another commitment. Now, there's this wave of additional investment. And then the energy shifts again when all of a sudden the entrepreneur looks back and goes, I've put in quite a bit of investment into this thing. And even though the business has grown, it's not justifying this significant new investment that I've made. And so what sort of energy starts to pop up? Worry, anxiety. It can even be another version of frantic. Oh my gosh, was I right to make all of this additional investment? Okay, it's usually a sign for us that this business is ready to start to take off, or this business is ready to start asking itself, is this really the business that I want to be in? So all along this journey, there are businesses that will fall off, okay? And this is one of those points. Now, in the interest of time, let's stick to the success story, okay? So in the success story, the investment does pay off, and this business has a good product, a good service. They know how to take it to market. There's been investment, and all of a sudden, there's this next period. And this next period is usually described with some numbers. So we will throw some numbers into this thing. And in this next period, usually people say, the business went from, I hope it's going to work, it's starting to work, and now it's really working. Okay? Usually people say it's cash flow positive. Okay? And even though the business is growing, there's more clients, there's more people, there's more everything, and the entrepreneur is busier than he or she has ever been, the energy word that they gave us actually has nothing to do with busy. It has everything to do with, I've gone from excited to frantic, to investing, to being worried about it, and then all of a sudden, I don't have to really worry about this business anymore. It's actually working. And so what energy word goes with that? I don't have to worry about the business anymore. Relief. Now, if I had my way, if I was the architect of these frameworks, I would write the word relief in here, because that's what I hear 95% of the time. I'm going to give you the word that's actually in the document that we're going to send out for consistency. And so the word is energetically relaxed. Okay? And this period gets its own special name. It's called good times. And later in life, people will look back to this period and they will call it the good old days. And interestingly, more people refer to this period as the good old days than they refer to as this period. Because when they're later in life looking back, they're not really thinking about the money side, they're thinking about their time. So they'll talk about this period of time where it was all so manageable. It was this club, it was this group of people. We were like a family. I knew everybody. I knew their spouse, I knew their kids. Okay? I knew all my clients and their spouses and their kids. Okay? And so there's this deep appreciation for sort of time and what people are doing with their time. And it's all new clients and new growth and this thing's actually working. It's just this wonderful energy around the business. Okay? Now, businesses with good products, know how to take it to market, significant investment, they tend to hit a faster growth phase. And there's one significant thing that tends to fuel the growth. There's something that makes bringing the next client on easier now than it ever was in the past. So what does the business have as an asset that drives attracting new clients into the business? Reputation, word of mouth, brand, all of those things. And in this age, that happens faster than it ever has because of social media and technology and things like that. And so businesses tend to go to this faster period of growth. And it's another period where people often talk about the numbers, particularly sort of the money. And usually what they say is something like, more often than not, whatever was our energetic expectation of revenue, it was surpassed. And because they budgeted for a certain amount of revenue and more came through the door, it felt like they had extra cash. We've never had that before. We have extra cash. We have excess cash. So what do people do with the excess cash? They actually do a few things.
Buy toys.
Buy toys. Okay, so what do those toys look like? What are examples of those toys? Cars. Motorcycles, boats, houses. It doesn't have to. It could be just go on a nice trip. It could be whatever. But people tend to pay themselves back for the investment, for the sacrifice. It could be a decade to this point. Okay? And it's like, hey, let's enjoy this. We've created something. Let's enjoy this. Where else does the money go? Back into the business. People look at this and go, oh my gosh, this is the easiest time in my life to invest. It feels like every time I put $1 in the business, $2 comes back. And so people invest a lot during this phase. And they invest fairly quickly. If you think about decision making during this phase, let's take two extremes. So in one extreme, there is slow, methodical, analyze it to death. Big spreadsheets, tons of meetings, all that sort of stuff. On this end of the spectrum, there is a slow decision is a bad decision. Let's just go. So more often, which type of decision making is happening during this period? Slow, fast. Fast. And is that wrong? Is that necessarily wrong? It's not necessarily wrong. Is it always going to be optimal? Are you always going to make the decision to make exactly the right amount of dollars into the right amount of whatever you're investing in? It's unlikely. You're willing to give up some sort of perfectness of those decisions in order for speed because look, the growth is sitting right in front of you. So we call this period payback because people tend to pay themselves back. And the energy we heard was something around euphoric. It was that feeling of the wave. Some people just refer to it as a bit of a wild ride. Like it was just happening all so fast, a lot of people will say. Okay? Now, let's just imagine that this first time through the journey of business, and that is the experience to date. So energetically, what's the expectation of the future? Something like that. How often does that happen? Approximately? Never. So more importantly, why does it never happen? Never happens. Why?
Competition.
Competition. People are watching this, seeing the cars and the boats, seeing all the cash coming in. And it's easier to create or copy. It's usually easier to copy. So competition comes in. Hey, look, they're doing it, we can too. Okay? And by the way, we're small and nimble, and we can go after this very focused part of the marketplace. These bigger guys are out there trying to do a whole lot of different things now. We can probably steal some of their client base. Happens all the time. What's another reason? Why else does this never go up and up forever?
Fatigue.
Yeah, this is a pretty crazy period of time. And there's some combination of fatigue. And we were with a group a couple weeks ago, and they self-assessed that, oh my gosh, that was that period where afterwards we realized we started to take our eye off the ball. Okay? It's like this thing's just working on its own. Like, we can do no wrong was the phrase that they said they had during that period. And then afterwards they went back and went, yeah, we made a few mistakes. Okay, so fatigue, taking your eye off the ball. Other things, other factors?
The systems you have in place can't continue to scale up.
Absolutely. So the systems, whether technology-based or not, that make this company work, don't work for this now bigger company. And what happens is people come into the business, and what they told us was during this period, not only was there some down energy around the growth isn't as easy and as fast as it was, but now I'm coming into the business every day, and I'm dealing with things like people issues, system issues. Someone tells me I need a proper HR team. We've gone cross-border, and we have profit in this one territory, but when I record it on my books, it doesn't look like profit anymore because there's this thing called exchange rate. And all of a sudden the bank is asking these questions because I didn't even know I had this thing called a covenant. I was not worried about any of that stuff. And so how is the entrepreneur feeling when they come into the office and the growth isn't as easy and the stuff that they're dealing with is people, systems, HR, technology, the crap? How are they feeling dealing with that? Frustrated. And how well do they deal with that? Typical entrepreneur. Yeah, let's just go back to the good old days. Okay? And some have actually said that. They said our first strategy to get out of this funk is let's just go back to the good old days and do it like that. And how often is that the answer? Approximately never. Okay? And so what happens is the frustration builds and it turns into stress. Okay? And quite sadly, there's a lot of physical and relationship issues that are a consequence of that stress. And businesses don't tend to sort of inch into this bigger wall, we call it the second brick wall. They tend to feel like they slammed into it. Some people talk about like it feels like we've been hitting our head against the wall, trying to figure out how did we get into this funk and how do we get out of it. Okay? Now the energy typically for the owner-entrepreneur goes into a space of what we call disillusion. So they privately might be saying to their spouse and to a few close advisors, this isn't why I started this thing. This isn't why I put all my time and energy into this thing, to come in and to deal with this frustration and this stress. That's not fun anymore. Now, a lot of people do what with their business at this point? They sell. Now, if this company hasn't decided to sell, they go through what we call a research phase. And so because what they've been doing isn't working and what they did in the good old days isn't working, they start to ask a lot of questions of themselves and others and advisors, and they might go back to school, they might read a whole bunch of books, but they just go through a whole bunch of research. what do we need to do differently to get back onto something that feels more successful? Okay, it could be weeks, could be months, could be years. And at some point, there's a decision to do something differently. Okay, so we have language for it, but it's not what our clients use. Our clients don't say, we're doing this big restructuring. That's a sort of a corporate language maybe. But there is some change in the business, and we call it a restructuring. And they're ready to do it because the energy shifts and the management team is re-energized about the future. So you might now have a business with hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. And the management team comes forth and says, good news, everybody. We have figured out what to do differently to get our business back onto a better path. And we're really excited about it. Okay? And it involves these new things. And the typical staff member in the business reacts how to this announcement about these new things we're going to do. Okay? So there is change coming. There's fear. How is this going to affect me? You know what? Maybe it's not perfect, but now in the face of everything changing, I actually kind of like what we're doing and how we're doing it. And there's a whole bunch of resistance to change. And a lot of business end up swirling around in this wall because the pushback is so strong, whether aggressively or passively, that it stops the change effort. So it might actually be all the right ideas. It might be the perfect solution, the perfect strategy. But without the alignment of enough people in the business, the change actually doesn't take hold. And often what happens is it throws the leadership team back into disillusion. I can't believe my loyal team members who've been with us forever, who've always just taken on the change. This time, even they're doing this. Okay? Now, we asked initially 700, and since then, hundreds of thousands of people around the world to self-assess how long they spent in the second brick wall, if they'd been through the journey to the other side. And what's your guess as to the range in years that we've heard back in terms of people's self-assessment about how long they spent in the wall? Just throw out some guesses. 2, 5,
6 years.
6. Any other guesses?
6 months.
6 months. It can be all of those things. Okay. 3 to 7 is where the majority fall in. And usually it's a bit longer because looking back, people realize that they actually went into this wall a little bit earlier than they thought they did. There's that period of denial where they didn't really want to admit that anything had really shifted, but you know what? It really had shifted. Okay? Now, make the right decisions, meaning focus on the right strategies and align enough of the people to those. So this is where change management and all that sort of stuff comes in. And you can get the business here to advance growth. Where the energy word we heard was proud of the whole journey, but particularly proud of this part of the journey that we never knew we actually had to go through. No one ever told us about this thing that felt like it got in the way of this easy growth. So they often talk about getting through this successfully as the part that they were most proud of. Now, a few people at the top typically confidentially report that between the re-energizing about the future and actually getting to proud, there was a feeling of lost. And so just think about, I've run this business, we've run this business for, let's say, decades, a certain way. And in order to get from where we are in this bit of a funk back to this easy growth, we had to make some real change. And maybe what I do or the way I do it fundamentally has changed. Okay? So someone's whole identity may have shifted through the wall.